My name is Aisha Jalil. Welcome to the newscast. For national news, railroads have expanded across the country. The government has encouraged immigration, and factories have used new tools and methods to produce supplies in big numbers. Many immigrants left their countries due to religious discrimination and crop failures. People began to raise concerns about the impact of industrialization on the environment. Yellowstone Park was created in 1872 in order to protect lands. National Park Service protected certain lands because of their beauty or national resources. The impact of industrialization helped America exported grain, steel, and textiles in huge amounts and became a world economic power. Industry was growing more rapidly, caused business to obtain raw materials easily. Thank you. Now go on to Julia.
Thanks, Aisha. On to big business. To take advantage of expanding markets, investors developed a form of group ownership known as a corporation. In a corporation, a number of people share the ownership of a business. A monopoly is a complete control of a product or service. Cartels are businesses making the same product and agree to limit the production, thus keeping prices high. Horizontal integration is a system of consolidating many firms in the same business. Vertical integration is gaining control of the many different businesses that make up all phases of a product development. Because of their capacity to swindle the poor, shrewd capitalists became known as robber barons. A popular example is John D. Rockefeller. Many people believe that business leaders serve the nation positively, thus earning the nickname captains of industry. Andrew Carnegie was a well-known charitable captain of industry. Social Darwinism wealth was a measure of one's inherent value, and those who had it were most fit. William Graham Sumner used social Darwinism to fuel discrimination. In 1887, the U.S. Senate created the Interstate Commerce Commission to oversee railroad operations. It was the first federal body to ever set up and monitor American business operations. In 1890, the Senate passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed any trust that operated in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states. The ICC and Sherman Antitrust Act began a trend towards federal limitation on corporations' power. On to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Julia. Now on to the organized labor movement. Factory workers seeking to maximize profits employed people who would work for low wages. Sweatshops employed thousands of people, mainly women, who worked for long hours on machines making mass-produced items. Company towns were isolated communities that many laborers were forced to live in near their workplace. Collective bargaining is negotiating as a group for higher wages or better working conditions. Socialism is an economic and political philosophy that favors public instead of private control of property and income. Socialists believe that wealth should be distributed equally to everyone. Knights of Labor was a labor union that included all workers of any trade and also actively recruited African Americans. It was founded by Uriah Smith Stephens. Soon after, Terence B. Powderly later took on leadership. American Federation of Labor was a loose organization of skilled workers from local unions devoted to specific crafts or trades. It was formed by Samuel Gompers. Haymarket Riot was a labor-related protest in Chicago which ended in deadly violence. The Knights of Labor was blamed for the riot and their membership declines. Homestead strike was part of an epidemic of steel workers and miners' strikes that took place as economic depression spread across America. This led to steel worker unions to lose power throughout the country. Eugene V. Debs organized the American Railway Union as an industrial union, grouping all railroad workers together rather than separating them by the job they held. Pullman strike was workers striking against the Pullman Palace Car Company. It halted both railroad traffic and mail delivery. Now on to you, Ren.
Thanks, Natalie. Jim Crow laws kept blacks and whites segregated. State governments limit voting rights with poll taxes and literacy tests. Some southern states enacted the grandfather clause, which allowed a person to vote as long as his ancestors had voted prior to 1866. Plessy v. Ferguson, in 1896, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Jim Crow laws. The Chinese Exclusion Act prohibited Chinese laborers from entering the country. Chinese immigrants turned to the federal courts to protect their rights, but got mixed results. Las Gorras Blancas targeted the property of large ranch owners by cutting holes in barbed wire fences and burning houses. Many Mexicans resented the loss of their lands. Women also fought for a constitutional amendment to allow them to vote. The number of women going to college jumped. By 1900, one-third of all college students in the U.S. were women. The Women's Christian Temperance Union wanted to prohibit the sale of alcohol and also prohibited other social issues like health and welfare. Booker T. Washington argued that blacks should earn an education and establish reputations as hard workers and honest citizens to overturn the Jim Crow laws. He also established the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, which was known for an industrial education. W.E.B. Du Bois opposed Washington's ideas and thought that blacks should demand full and immediate equality and not limit themselves to vocational education. He also thought that the right to vote was not a right blacks needed to earn, but was automatically given to them. Ida B. Wells wrote editorials attacking the practice of lynching in the South in her newspaper, Free Speech. Now on to you, Josh.
Thanks, Ren, and now moving on to political parties. Political parties were so evenly divided that no group could gain complete control for any period of time. Most presidents won by a slim margin of vote due to their own secret tactics, such as Rutherford B. Hayes, who won only due to a secret deal. Benjamin Harrison, who lost the popular vote and won the Electoral College votes, and Chester Arthur, who only got into presidency due to Garfield's assassination. Political cartoonists raised alarm of wealthy big businesses and their damaging effects of corruption and big money. And Thomas Nast, a political cartoonist, did a series of cartoons on William Marcy Boss Tweed and exposed him of his illegal activities. The spoils system allowed government politicians to reward loyal party workers with government jobs. The civil service system is a system that includes federal jobs in the executive branch, which was highly supported by the government, or at least a number of prominent figures based in the government. James Garfield gets assassinated by Charles J. Keitel, which made the belief of civil service reform a reality. Chester A. Arthur became president after Garfield. Arthur created the Pendleton Civil Service Act, which made individuals who wanted government jobs had to take the exam, not by connections or manipulating one political connection. Both parties disagreed with the gold standard, which meant to use gold as the basis of the nation's currency, and Republicans supported a higher tariff, while everyone else disapproved and wanted lower tariffs. Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1873, which reversed the government policy of making both gold and silver coins, and will be backed on with farmers and Welcome back. We'll be talking about farmers and populism. Farmers who lived in the West and South struggled to strive for their dreams. They struggled due to having too low prices for crops, but too high prices for transportation, and they were also in debt. Between 1870 through 1895, prices plummeted, and farmers had to mortgage their farms and burn crops. Farmers blamed big businesses for their difficulties, and they protested at railroads and how the banks set interest at ridiculously high wages. They organized the Grange, which had successfully attracted about 1 million members. They were able to get government to regulate railroads, and they formed the ICC, which is the Interstate Commerce Commission. The Grange starts to fall, but farmers form new alliances such as the Southern Farmers Alliance and the Colored Farmers Alliance, which work together to sell crops or go to postal banks to provide farmers with low interest rates. The Farmers Alliance helped build the foundations for the Populist Party, and they formed their platform in Omaha, Nebraska in July 1892. which warned the dangers about political corruption, an inadequate monetary supply, and an unresponsive government. To fight low prices, they called for the coinage of silver and against high costs, and they demanded the government ownership of the railroads. They nominated James B. Weaver of Iowa as their presidential candidate and James Field of Virginia as his running mate. Populists were able to achieve 3 elected governors, 5 senators, and 10 congressmen. In the South, the Populist Party had to unite whites and blacks. William Jennings Bryan was elected as the Democratic Party's presidential candidate. William McKinley was nominated as the Republican candidate. McKinley won the election of 1896 and went on to win the re-election, again over Bryan in 1900. Bryan's emphasis on free silver did not appeal to urban workers, and the Populist Party failed to win a state outside of the South and West. The Populist Party started to lose power after the defeat of the election in 1896 and could never recover. Even though the Populist Party had failed and rather disappeared, its impact has still left a long-lasting effect on the progressives and early 20th century decade. And thank you, Miss Phillips, for making this all possible. Thank you.